listen to reason? Will you open your eyes? It's a wonder what you'll find with an open mind. You may be surprised. Yeah, gotta get away from this illusion for the sake of the world. This delusion, it's gotta go. Yeah.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Atheist Experience. I am your host, Russell Glasser, filling in for Matt Dillahunty, who's sick today, and with me is Don Baker.
Hey, good to be here. It's been a while.
Yeah, good to see you. Today is Sunday, January 27th, 2013. We are a live call-in public access atheist television show based in Austin, Texas, and dedicated to promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. We are also available through live streaming video at ustream.tv. The official Atheist Experience website is www.atheist-experience.com. You can provide feedback by commenting on the official show blog at freethoughtblogs.com/AXP, or you can email us at tv@atheist-community.org. If you enjoy the show, please check out our sister podcast, Godless Bitches, which had a new episode last week. You can find links at the Atheist Experience website. And as always, the cast and crew of the Atheist Experience will be going to dinner after the show at Threadgill's at 301 West Riverside Drive, arriving at around 6 p.m. Over to you, Don.
Yeah, and we have a big audience today, so I'm
Yeah,
thrilled
we
to
do.
have so many visitors. That's
You know,
wonderful.
we've been Yay!
Feels like a
been
real show, huh?
getting consistently bigger audiences.
Yeah,
It's
that's
pretty cool.
great.
People
That's
are
great.
coming in from out of town a lot too.
Well, today I wanted to talk
Thanks.
about, I've been doing a long series of failures of Christianity, and I've done 11 topics previously, and so today will be the 12th. If you'd like to look them up on our archives, you're welcome to do that. They're all there. Today I want to talk about nothing new under the sun, referring to Jesus, or nothing novel about Jesus. So many Christians claim that Jesus is miraculous and it makes him somehow special. Certainly that's a good thing to have if you're going to have a religion. There's a lot of usual traits. There's a lot of uninteresting traits that are attributed to Jesus too, and I won't be talking about those, like the fact that he was a man, supposedly, and a carpenter, and a firstborn, and had brothers and sisters, and was a rabbi, and even the crucifixion is not that unusual because a lot of people were crucified. But there were all sorts of unusual claims about Jesus, supernatural claims, many of them. And all of those, or at least the main ones, have all been seen in earlier religions. So either the earlier gods and heroes existed and had these traits, and rendering Jesus just kind of run-of-the-mill and uninteresting in the long line of gods, or somehow the earlier stories are myths, but not Jesus, and God, in creating this Jesus story, lacked any sort of imagination. So maybe God can't, doesn't have enough imagination to come up with anything new, like might have been seen in the Eastern religions or in the New World
wasn't
religions.
it Joseph Campbell who said there are only like 11 archetypes of all stories, or something like that?
So and that speaks to the fact that maybe it's human creation and human nature involved here, and not so much supernatural stuff. So either way you slice it, the failure of Jesus of doing anything truly novel is definitely a failure of Christianity. And I think it's most likely that Jesus is an amalgam of traits cobbled together, consciously or unconsciously. And there was this tradition of pious fraud in early Christianity of embellishing to get converts. And so that's what I think is going on here. I don't have concrete proof of it. I won't say that that's actually factually what happened, but boy, it sure does look that way. So I want to look at the supernatural claims of Jesus, and all of these are things that my examples will be of earlier religions, earlier gods, or gods that were known at the time of Jesus' alleged birth. So there's his virgin birth, there's being born under a star, him having great wisdom, miracles, ascension to heaven, resurrection, and the second coming. And I should mention that I'm touching on some themes that were brought up in the movie Zeitgeist.
Blah.
And
Zeitgeist.
Russell wrote a nice blog post on our Atheist Experience blog about it, and that movie is not very good in the sense that it really overreached and really didn't have very good scholarship. And there's a link on his post to a critique of that, and I recommend to read that. I'm going to try to avoid those little traps.
Yeah, I don't have a comprehensive response to Zeitgeist.
Right.
I put together something Matt wrote and then put links to other stuff I've written, and also
Right.
like links to sites that go after various parts of the movie.
Right. Right.
In addition to being terrible scholarship, it's also a really awful movie. So.
Right. Well, it has a strong conspiracy theory slant to it, and the religion part of it is the sort of the first third of it. Then it goes into 9/11 conspiracies, and then the Illuminati and all that stuff. So
right, and I mean, like a lot of conspiracy theory, it's got possibly specks and elements of truth in it, but it just works really overtime at coming up with all these wild, outlandish connections that there's no real evidence of.
Right, right. So, and it's unfortunate because I think you can make a strong case that there's a problem here without resorting to those techniques. And that's what I'm going to try to do today. So let's talk about the virgin birth. Well, in Egyptian mythology, the conception of Horus by Isis is traced all the way back to the beginning of Egyptian history, and Horus's conception and birth were understood in terms of parthenogenesis, or virgin birth. So there's an example of a virgin birth. God-human pairings were quite common in Greek mythology. Zeus was a very busy guy, and he produced all sorts of children, half-breed children of Hercules and Dionysus were among those. The Alexander, the Ptolemies, and the Caesars were all said by some scholars to have been virgin-born. So this is a way of elevating them in their stature and making them purer. And it was said that the god Zoroaster's birth was foretold from the beginning of time, and that the moment he was born, he burst out laughing, and the whole universe rejoiced with him. So as you can see, this virgin birth or birth through magical means is a common theme in mythologies. In the Bible, the virgin birth, there's a very interesting history of how the Bible got to have this virgin birth thing. It's based on a story in Isaiah 7:14 that was written around 735 BCE. And the king at the time received a message from his prophet Isaiah during a war at that time, and it said, "Therefore the Lord of his own shall give you a sign. Behold, the woman is with child, and she shall bear a son, and the son's name, and he shall be called Emmanuel." So that's Isaiah 7:14.
Well, we got that wrong. They called him Jesus.
Well, yeah. Well, there's this conflation, right? And this particular phrase, this particular virgin birth story or birth story was rehashed. It's a midrash sort of thing in the New Testament. So this is generally taken by commentators to be the original context, a reference to the non-miraculous birth of Hezekiah, or another contemporary child, as indicated in Isaiah's following, an indication of timing. The Septuagint and other Christian translations following the application of Isaiah 7 to Matthew 1, they used the word virgin instead of young woman. So it got copied and pasted in another completely different context and embellished. And Justin Martyr may have been the guy who did this, an early Christian father.
Right. So to be clear, you're saying the New Testament definitely says he was born of a virgin, but they were doing that to try to retrofit it to an old prophecy in the Old Testament that didn't say virgin at all.
That's right. And wasn't prophecy at all.
Right.
So
yeah, like a lot of prophecy is just talking about current events, and then people come in later and they're cherry picking for prophecy, and they say, "Oh, look at that! They said that would happen, and sure enough, it did."
Right. So at best it's a cut, copy, paste error, and at worst it's a deliberate embellishment. How about born under the star? Well, in the Christian tradition, the Star of Bethlehem, also called the Christmas star, mentioned in Matthew 2, revealed the birth of Jesus to the biblical magi, and who later led them to Bethlehem. It's not mentioned in the earlier Gospels, so that raises the question: was it not known, which doesn't seem likely, or was it not important, which doesn't seem likely? But when you kind of view the context of Matthew in context, in the time it was written, Matthew's description of the miracles and portents attending the birth of Jesus can be compared to stories concerning the birth of Augustus, which is 63 BCE, linking his birth to the first appearance of a star, linking a birth to the first appearance of a star was consistent in popular belief that a person's life was linked to a particular star. There's so many stars, right? You got to have some connection to them. The Magi and astronomical events were linked in the public mind to a visit to Rome by a delegation of Magi at the time of a spectacular appearance of Halley's Comet in 66 CE. So this is 66 years after the birth. There's this embellishment going on of the gospel based on what was kind of going on at the time that this was written, not at the time that was being written about. So this delegation was led by the king of Tiridates of Armenia, King Tiridates of Armenia, who came seeking confirmation of his title from Emperor Nero. The ancient historian Dio Cassius wrote, "The king did not return by the route he had followed in coming," a line echoed in Matthew's account. So this seems to be, a marketing embellishment. What about great wisdom? Well, this isn't a supernatural thing, but if you're supernatural and you're a god, maybe you know some things that other folks don't. Well, what about the golden rule? The golden rule dates way back, dates long before Jesus, and you can even go back to Confucius back in in China. Never impose on others what you would not choose for yourself. And Confucius lived 551 BCE. A version of the golden rule appears in Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, Zoroastrianism, and the rest of the world's major religions. So nothing new there. Great wisdom. The Sermon on the Mount is supposedly sublime wisdom from Jesus. Well, it contains a lot of bad advice that Christians are wise not to follow, such as giving away all your possessions and not saving for the future. Matt Dillahunty did a nice deconstruction of the Sermon on the Mount, and it's in the Iron Chariots Wiki, and you can find that there if you want to go delve into details. So that's worth looking at.
Yeah, just go there and type Sermon on the Mount.
Yeah, so that's easy to find. So what about real wisdom in the ancient world? Well, Solon, living 638 to 558 BCE, was a lawgiver, and his 10 Commandments, or the 10 Commandments that are attributed to him, are much wiser than the 10 Commandments in the Bible. You can go look those up. It talks about friendship and leadership and things that are of actual practical use. Epicurus, 341 to 270 BCE, was a philosopher and came up with the idea of atoms in the void, and he formulated the problem of evil, among many other things. Brilliant man. Hit a lot of things right on the head. Seneca the Younger, 4 BCE to 65 CE. He was a philosopher, Stoic, and much of the love and morals sentiment in the New Testament seems to have come from him. And later Christian forgeries try to co-opt him as part of the Christian elders, although he had no relation to that. Okay, so what about miracles? Well, stories of ancient miracles are a dime a dozen. And you can look up Apollonius of Tyana. It would be a good example of an ancient miracle worker. What real evidence do we have today of ancient miracles? Not much. We have claimed holy relics, which can be, fabricated and used to rob the gullible. We have old stories, such as that of an empty tomb that can't be verified. And we have stories about people who believe the miracles, such as Doubting Thomas, and none of these are convincing.
Right. I always like the story about Doubting Thomas because I say, where's the evidence? And they go, well, Doubting Thomas got evidence. It's like, well, that doesn't do any of us good now that it's another story in your book that he got evidence.
Right. It seems like it's just kind of trying to buttress a bad story, right?
Right.
So what's more likely, that the laws of the universe were broken for the sake of a parlor trick or a miracle used to market God, or somebody was mistaken and received? Which of those is more likely? David Hume is a modern thinker who did quite a bit of work on miracles and has a very good deconstruction.
By modern, you mean
modern-ish
17th century or so?
Yeah. Well, it's good stuff.
More
then.
modern.
Good stuff then, yeah. What about ascension to heaven? Well, the afterlife played an important role in ancient Egyptian religion, and its belief system is one of the earliest known in recorded history. I won't go into it, but the Egyptians had a notion, something like we would call a soul, Ka, a life force that leaves the body after death, and your Ba is your personality, and these have to be reunited in the next life, and there's, it's not exactly the same, but there still is this idea of ascending to heaven, and the pharaohs certainly did, and that's what a lot of the rituals concerning mummification had to do with, is making sure that the kings would be properly provisioned in the next life. Greek had a notion of afterlife, and that was Hades, although Hades is certainly less pleasant than heaven. It's kind of a dark, awful place. The Norse had their notion of Valhalla, which is the afterlife for war heroes. So this is nothing new here, nothing new in the ascension to heaven. What about resurrection? Well, resurrection was a common part of various mythologies used to explain the seasons, and I think we could say that Joseph Campbell recognized this as one of the archetypes, right? The resurrecting God. There are tons of these. There's the Ugaritic Ball, there's Melqart, Adonis, Eshmun, Osiris, Attis, Dumuzi. These are all gods of various cultures. Many of them, there's kind of a whole category of life, rebirth, and death deities. Right? There's so many of them, they get their own category. And all of these, by the way, predate Jesus. And these gods are often gods of vegetation. They die and they are reborn every year, just as the vegetation dies and is reborn as the sun goes up and down based on our good old axial tilt. This is also, these gods tend to be where we get the tradition of eating of the body too, right? Because you're eating of the god, eating the god's body gives you strength, or gives you that edge, right? Kind of the power bars of the ancient world. And a lot of these gods were symbolized by vegetation or grain or something like that. So as far as Jesus' resurrection, there's a problem there that a lot of folks don't quite realize. The earliest versions of Mark, which is the earliest gospel, the earliest copies that we have of it, ends at verses 16:8 with an empty tomb. And this is not the case that some of it's missing. These earlier copies ended there. And that means that the author didn't know about the resurrection 40 years later, or he didn't think it was important. So again, we have this problem of, where does this resurrection come from? If it wasn't important to the original author of the thing, it wasn't known to the original author of the thing, where did it come from? Well, it's probably a later edition. And we do have different endings. There have been different endings found of Mark that go off in different directions after that. And the canonized version that has been accepted definitely has a different author than the original, based on the analysis of the type of writing and things. So it seems very likely that the resurrection was an addition that was added on. And perhaps it was to gain converts from religions that had a resurrection tradition. So you wanted to get some of those guys, hey, we got resurrection too. You can come hang with us. So multiple resurrections, a second coming. I talked about the second coming in one of my earlier shows. Certainly if you have earlier gods that are resurrecting every year, that's more impressive than a god that resurrects just once, right? So that's more interesting. But Jesus' second coming is nothing more than a broken promise. It's something that he said would happen and has not happened, and he actually gave times that it would happen, and those times have passed, so it didn't happen. So you can make a quite strong statement that this is a broken promise, and nobody should find it impressive. So I talked about that in more detail on episode 478, The Failure of the Second Coming.
748.
748, thank you. So in the ancient world, gods were a dime a dozen. There were jillions of them, more than you could point a stick at. And many of them were cynically created, right? Were created by humans, and people generally knew they were created by humans, right? So this is a bit different than there's a worship of something and it gets embellished over time. These are deliberate creations. The god Serapis was invented by Ptolemy and was promulgated by the state for multiple centuries before the creation of Jesus. And this is an example of a made-up god, and people generally knew this, although they were the more ignorant folks worship those gods. Seneca the Younger had a great quote, "Religion is regarded by the common people as true, by the wise as false, and by the rulers as useful." And that seems to be a very... It seems to get at the whole idea of inventing a god for the sake of the state. There's another one that I was tickled by, and Emperor Hadrian, Roman Emperor Hadrian, had a favorite, and that's a term referred to somebody who's part of his court who's kind of special. And this guy happened to be a boy toy of his, male lover, Antinous. And he was elevated to a god by Hadrian after the boy died. He was a teenager.
Wow, that's a really nice favor.
It's a really nice favor. And
that's very thoughtful. If only all lovers would be that
yes,
considerate.
that considerate, yeah. And so there's a lot of statuary associated with this young man. And
Catholics do the same thing with saints now, more or less, right?
Sure. And I was especially tickled by the reaction of the early church Christian elders, Justin Martyr, Origen, Clement of Alexandria, and Tertullian of Carthage. All knew of Antinous and were rather kind of pissed off about it and rather pissy about it because they were trying to promote their god man who they and here was this boy toy being promoted anyway. So they were a little upset about it. Even the divinity of Jesus is a late invention, not settled until the Council of Nicaea in 325 CE. So there were all sorts of different branches of Christianity before that time that didn't believe that Jesus was divine or had some different spin on it. And so there was this case of, okay, here we're going to have this council and we're going to settle this stuff and choose one religion. And I file this under the phrase I often say of the state religion is not your religion, right? So it was kind of forced down the throats of everybody else.
So, I mean, I know the Council of Nicaea sort of canonized a whole bunch of books.
Yes, but
didn't the book? I mean, the books were around. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Some of them mention the divinity of Jesus, right?
Right.
Were those books just like specifically ignored by people who didn't believe in the divinity of Jesus?
Well, there just wasn't a consensus.
Okay.
And so, it's like a making sausage sort of thing that you may not want to, you might like the outcome, but you might not like how it happened. So, there were different visions, different ideas, and no sort of concrete evidence. People can point to different things in the Bible, but as Jeff D. points out, it's a great big book of multiple choice, right? Anyway, so the conclusion here is what's more likely? That the mythology surrounding Jesus is true, but the creator of the universe lacked imagination and was just a slave to early mythologies? Or that Jesus was an amalgam of marketing ideas from earlier religions that were popular at the time of his creation? And I think the latter is true. Though I'm not claiming a conspiracy, I'm not claiming that this is something that was intentional or whatever. I do think that there was a desire to grow the religion of Christianity at the time, and they had a different attitude about the use of truth at that time, and I think they were happy to embellish and invent things in order to get more converts because they thought the ends justified the means. I don't think that today we would tolerate such a thing, or we try not to tolerate such a thing.
Scientology.
Scientology, right. So once you see the earlier beliefs in context, Jesus is just not interesting. He's not that interesting, and therefore there's nothing new under the sun, and that's a failure of Christianity.
Okay, great.
Okay, thanks. Let's take some callers.
Let's take some callers. We're going to start with, oh shoot, I lost it. He was in Toronto. I'm just going to take, two. Thank you.
Hamad?
Hamad.
Yes, hello.
Hey, welcome.
Hi.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, thank you for taking my call. First of all, I just wanted to have a talk about the existence of God, not very much related to the topic that you're talking about.
Oh, that's fine. That's
Okay.
fine.
Okay. But the thing is that I have listened many of your shows and have talked to many atheists and so, and I'm a Muslim, by the way.
Okay.
Maybe you don't have many Muslims calling in your show.
Not too
Actually,
many.
a lot of people wish we'd get more, so thanks for calling.
Yeah, we appreciate your call.
All right. So in this sense, I would like to talk about God in a different way, taking a different approach, which is that when we talk about God, I think it is very essential that we need to define God, and what do I consider God to be?
Okay.
Sounds
So
good.
what is God for me? And if those attributes or those characteristics that I associate to God can be somehow explained by rationality, by logic, to my human intellectual mind, then it is automatically that I have to believe in such a thing. And the approach that I want...
just
Yes,
to get
please.
this, just to be clear on this, you're about to make an argument for God that appeals to pure logic and doesn't necessarily have any physical or real-world evidence behind it.
Well, this is the thing. This is the thing to consider, because I do not consider God to be something physical or something bound to physicality, which
Okay.
can be scientifically evidenced or which can be, somehow evidenced by anything material in that sense speaking.
So in fact, evidence for your God in principle can't possibly exist. Is that what you're saying?
No, material evidence.
Okay.
Okay, material related to physicality, scientific evidence, or a mathematical evidence, something like that does not exist for me. A God like that
All right.
doesn't exist. But this does not mean that it means now that nothing like that can exist.
Well, the time
Okay.
the time to believe in something is when there's sufficient evidence, right? Otherwise, you might be believing in something that's false, or believing in something for bad reasons, and maybe acting the wrong way based on a false belief, right?
You're absolutely correct in this. I agree with you. But this only applies to things that we can verify. Since, for example, let me tell you something. If something supernatural exists, you cannot use the tools of science, of physicality to prove something supernatural.
Why not?
That does not mean that something like supernatural cannot exist.
Why not?
But yeah, the point here is that that Russell would like to make probably is
Sure.
that if God has no bearing at all on the universe and no effect on the universe, then that God's irrelevant. If the God
He
does
has
have an effect,
The
then
effect is different.
Can
And different than science can explain. Look, science could not explain many theories that we have today a couple of decades ago.
okay,
like what?
Like many things. Like, for example, the theory of Big Bang. Did we have that like 100 years ago?
Okay, so
The
would
M
it
theory,
would
the
it have
string
been
theory, all
sensible?
those different things.
Do you
Let
think
me
it would have
explain
been sensible 100 years ago without evidence for the Big Bang? Do you think it would have been sensible to jump to the conclusion that the Big Bang, if you were just to make up something that was like the Big Bang, do you think it would be reasonable to believe in it then?
No, because
Okay,
my
I
claim
agree.
was based on the Big Bang, right?
Okay.
My claim was different. The claim that I have for God is something different.
here's another
Okay.
question for you.
Okay?
If we can't, if we don't know something, is that evidence for a God?
No, listen to the approach that I want to say.
Okay.
I have to satisfy my human mind. Let aside science and evidence and everything. I have to satisfy my human mind whether a God or a being like God should necessarily exist or not.
Okay.
My mind has to be satisfied. Not through science.
That is probably going to be the main part where we disagree, but feel free to go on.
Okay, let me explain you. Because since I'm a Muslim, I have some very fundamental things about God.
Okay.
Some very fundamental characteristic attributes. And those attributes, one of the main thing that the Holy Quran, for example, says is that for you, God, or God is such a thing, that there is nothing like Him that you can find anywhere else. So God is a unique thing in an absolute sense. And He is an infinite being.
All
Now,
right.
let's only take these two things, for example. Being an infinite being, eternal, not those concepts that He is all loving and all caring and all these different things. Just take this example of Him being infinite in all sense.
Right. We get that you believe that.
Okay. The only thing is that atheists also must believe, even you must agree with me, that an infinite necessary existence must exist.
What?
Nope. Sorry.
You disagree with that, right?
Our universe is finite, and we can imagine infinities,
Exactly.
but we can't.
Look at that. Look at that. Your mind, our mind, any human mind at any time and space can only accept two possibilities. Either something is finite, it is limited, it is bound to something, or it is infinite.
Okay.
Tell me a third option. Can you conceive
Go
of
on
anything
with
else?
what you're saying. What do you have that will demonstrate that an infinite thing exists, or that your infinite God exists?
The infinite necessity for anything else is there.
I don't buy it.
We must accept something to be infinite, be it the universe or be it anything else, in order to accept that we, for example, exist.
No, I
or
don't.
the universe exists. Look, science is what they're trying to do. They have different theories only to explain that the universe can be eternal. Why do they say that it must be eternal? Or why do they say
Scientists
that
don't.
universes exist which are
Hey,
infinite in number?
dude. Scientists
Yes.
don't say the universe has to be eternal. So that's just wrong.
But look at that.
Scientists try to follow the evidence where the evidence leads.
Okay, look at the possibilities, what I'm trying to say. I'm saying that if you do not accept something to be eternal, then something has to be beyond that. Or
What?
that very thing has to be eternal.
I don't understand what you're saying. I'm sorry.
Look,
I'm not following it.
if the Big Bang, if there is nothing before the Big Bang, for example, just take that Big Bang as a model here.
Mm-hmm.
If there's nothing before the Big Bang, in the sense that the Big Bang existed, that singularity existed, then we must either accept that singularity was eternal, or we have to accept that something else was eternal.
The science surrounding that is effectively that time and space began at that time, so that the notion of a time before or something before is a nonsensical concept. So
okay, this is fine, but this is only to your understanding, because we have defined time, right? Time, space, and everything that exists.
We have a notion of it,
that.
yes.
And then absence of that is something which we consider nothing. But this does not mean that nothing we can conceive in an absolute sense.
What?
Do you understand that?
I'll admit that we're grappling with these notions and that we're trying to understand.
Things that I'm saying, that how am I possibly to
That's
explain anything
true,
here?
because you're saying a lot of stuff that is sort of pseudo philosophical nonsense.
No,
I mean,
it's
it's words that
it is very much necessary. So it is not something I'm making.
Yeah, I mean,
something.
it's necessary if you're married to the idea that there has to be a God, and you're starting from that conclusion and trying to justify it.
That's
but
very
it's
wrong.
not.
That's where you're wrong.
But it's not generally, something universal that either philosophers or scientists accept.
I'm saying, sorry, I'm just saying that take our human mind, right?
Uh-huh.
There are certain things we can accept, there are certain limitations we must accept.
Yep.
We cannot accept anything. We have to go with our mind. The only option in our mind that we have are only two. Either something is finite, it is limited, or something is infinite. It is
You
not
already
limited.
said that. I got that part.
Okay, you get that part.
Can you
Now,
demonstrate something that's physical and infinite?
Well,
this
you
is
said
the-
God's not physical.
Look,
Oh.
something
But
cannot be infinite and finite at the same time.
Okay.
Something cannot be limited and be unlimited at the same time.
Okay.
Okay?
So what?
But we have only these two options.
Okay.
Our mind only accepts these two options. If our mind accepts that this computer that I have in front of me, for example, is limited, is bound, then it cannot be unlimited as well.
Yeah, we've
it cannot
got
be finite and
we've
be
got
infinite at
that
the same
point.
time.
Get to the God part.
This is the thing. Once you accept something to be finite, anything what it is, you cannot accept that thing to be infinite, but the necessity for an infinite thing is still there.
No,
and
it
our
isn't.
mind accepts that.
No, it isn't.
Okay, if you do not accept that, but the mind of millions of other people must accept that.
I admit to concepts that concepts
I'm
of
talking about the
infinity.
necessity. I'm talking about the necessity, okay?
Okay, I don't
Listen to the
accept that
wording.
I don't see
infinity
it.
is a necessity.
So you're making an assumption here we don't agree with.
The necessity of an infinite being for something finite to exist.
Yeah, I don't accept that.
Yeah, well,
Convince
then-
me.
Look, because
I can
other
divide the
minds-
world. I can divide the world into two things: things that exist and things that don't exist. And just
Okay,
because I
that's
have
fine.
two categories doesn't mean that there's something in both of those categories.
Right, I can divide the world into purple snorkel whackers and not purple snorkel whackers, but that doesn't mean that there's anything in the first category.
Understand the thing. If you divide the world in two things, if you define everything in two, then you have to accept either one or the other.
Yeah, and
Right.
everything
And
could
everything
be in
could
one
be
of
in
the
one category.
categories.
Excuse me?
Everything could be in one category.
Right. In order
Everything
to
could be in one
to
category.
say that there is a thing in this category which is infinite beings, you have to make a case beyond I really want there to be something in there.
Okay, I'll try to explain that again, okay? Because it's very simple.
Okay.
If, let's say, the universe, for example, take not the Big Bang, just take the universe, what we know of the universe as of now.
Yep.
If this very universe is finite,
The universe is finite, I agree. You don't have to
Okay.
explain that.
then it cannot be infinite at the same time.
That's
Yep.
right.
Then it simply means because the universe is finite, it cannot be infinite,
Yep.
so something else must be beyond that.
Why?
Well, simply for these reasons that either you accept something to be finite or infinite. If it is
Yep.
something finite, it cannot be infinite. It cannot have everything.
Yeah,
You're trying to
I
create
already
infinites
agreed with that
somewhere,
part.
and we're not buying the fact that these infinites are magically appearing somewhere. That's the part we don't get.
But don't you understand this part that if the universe or if anything is not finite, it cannot exist by itself.
Why?
What? How can anything exist by itself?
I
Tell
think
me
that
from
I think the category of infinite things is empty, so you can't really say anything about them.
From anything, let's go to the deepest of the atom, from the vastness of the universe.
Okay.
Can anything
One is
exist by
bigger
itself?
than the other. What?
Can anything exist by itself? Just by itself?
I mean, if we say no, then that's assuming that the universe doesn't exist by itself, and I don't see any
Yeah.
reason to assume that.
And if you say yes, then you have to prove that, right? For which we have for which we have no evidence.
What? Okay, so you're
No.
saying that there's no evidence that the universe exists by itself, but there's also no evidence that a God exists. So where does that leave us?
This is very good. That's very good.
Okay.
You came to this point. This is good. Why you just said that is because you accept this universe to be not unique, not eternal.
No, I didn't.
Then you say,
We don't
why
know.
do I have to?
I
Why
mean-
do I have to believe?
I accept
We don't
that
know.
it's probably
Convince
not
us.
eternal, but I don't accept necessarily that it's not unique.
Look, this is the fallacy that you're committing.
Okay?
Yeah, there are scientific
I love
theories of
fallacies.
multiple universes, but we don't have a way of verifying them. So they're kind of curiosities at this point.
You,
Yeah,
you
and-
know, the thing is that you want to climb the ladder very slowly up, slowly up and go up step by step. Everything you'll take your step and put it on the ladder only when everything
what
is
fallacy
clearly
is that?
defined.
Because if you jump off the ladder, you might fall.
Okay, that's
All right, don't be that literal. Come on.
I'm not being mean. I'm just completing your analogy. Okay.
I'm saying this that whatever exists must be either finite or infinite.
Yeah, we got that part. You already said that.
If you accept something to be finite,
Yep.
you must accept something beyond that must be infinite.
Nope.
Okay, you explain me why not.
Okay. Tell you what. Here's a finite number, 52. I can imagine something bigger than that that's not infinite. 53.
You find it necessary, right? You find it necessary, don't you? You find it necessary that a bigger number must be there.
A bigger number. It's unbounded, but you can do that with all finite numbers.
But you can do that, but there's always a step further to go, right?
Right. I'm not sure that numbers are actually a good example
numbers may not be a
because
great
numbers
example.
are abstract and they do in principle go on infinitely. Whereas there's no actual demonstration that anything tangible and physical or tangible and infinite exists. And that's what you're trying to prove, and you're just trying to prove it by insisting that it has to exist.
This is my proof here. You're just taking my things, again, applying it in your form. When
it sounds like the ontological argument.
It does. Yeah.
Well, all of those philosophical arguments are in the essence the same thing, because they are trying to prove essentially one main thing. And this is that
I would say that they're trying to create a God, define a God into existence.
Yeah, I just think that if there was a good reason, if there was a good evidence-based reason to believe in God, then you wouldn't have to go through all these logical contortions to try to magic a God into existence by invoking abstract concepts. It's just very much unlike anything else we actually know about anything else in the world. That's why we don't believe in it.
Look, the first thing that you want a God to be in front of you, like scientifically, mathematically.
I'm not saying I want it to. I just say I don't have a good reason to believe it otherwise.
I have heard many times in this show people saying that we want to have a God which can be evidence, which can be verified.
It would help.
Such a God does not exist for me. This will help, but such a God does not exist for me.
Then there's probably nothing
I think
that
we're
will
in an
convince
impasse
us,
then.
right?
The thing is that the God that I'm trying to, not evidence, what I'm trying to define is such a God which should exist as a necessity for all else to exist.
I think you've still got more work to do on that. I think we're going to have to move on to other callers.
So we're going to stop here. Call back again sometime.
Yeah, feel free.
We enjoyed the conversation.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye. Where did my page go? Call up yours. Are we blank?
No, my browser's giving me troubles.
Jeremy in Whitewater, Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Hi. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
Very well, also.
I just want to say I really enjoyed the show. When I was kind of coming to terms with the fact that I was an atheist, your show kind of really helped with me being truthful to myself, so I appreciate that.
Oh, great. Thanks for watching.
We're thrilled to hear that.
The thing I wanted to talk about was I kind of grew up in a religious household a little bit, and so I saw a lot of rationalization of Old Testament things and things that don't make sense all the time. And I don't really understand why people feel the need to do it, but I think it comes from fear more than anything. But
to do what exactly? To do the rationalizations? To do what exactly? The rationalizations?
The rationalization, like when you talk about why people don't give all their money away because Jesus said so.
Oh, right. Yes.
Or why people don't stone their children out at the front of town or whatever. You know, a lot of religious people will rationalize it, including my family, and I think it has to do with they're brought up with it and they feel like they can't be wrong about it, but I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, well, people feel like religion is the source of all morality sometimes, but religion is so full of obviously horrible stuff that they have to talk about how, well, you know, he didn't really mean that, or it didn't apply to everybody.
I call it apologetics aerobics.
Yeah, or in the case of giving away all your money, you know, not horrible, but inconvenient.
Right. So yeah, there's a lot of rationalization. There's a lot of bending over backwards to try to justify something. You know, often I get you know, just this completely made up stuff, or somebody will just give up and say, I don't understand it. You know, I'm just a finite being. It's a mystery, right? I cannot understand God's ways, and so it's entertaining for a while, this sort of dialogue, I guess, because you get to see people go through these gyrations, do this aerobics. But at some point, with some people, you may not get very far with that, or you might get stuck.
Well, the really scary thing is, like I said, my family's religious. My father, he rationalizes, like, you know, the example I'm bringing up, but. My stepmother and her family, they don't even rationalize it. They accept it as, oh, that's what God wants, and that really scares me.
Shut off the brain, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, wait, so they do think you should stone your children?
They say that was right. That was, you know, and it scares me to death.
I think you're lucky you're still here then.
You know, and there are those people. It's just terrifying, though.
Yes, there are. There are.
Did you just never do anything that the Bible would call for stoning for? Because I seem to remember that they're pretty strict.
Right.
Well, you know, the thing is, they say that it is a justification in a sense. They say that the people that got stoned, the kids that got stoned, they deserved it. But okay. You know, of course, they don't stone. Well, they didn't stone me, but
why not?
You know. I don't know. Maybe
you should ask them.
It's a pretty horrible way to die. So
yeah,
you know.
Although it can be played for a lot of comedy if you're Monty Python.
Right.
You know, and now my girlfriend and I, you know, I'm a Pastafarian and she's a Thor worshiper. You know, and we have fun with that. You know.
Okay, good for you.
The original Thor or the one from Avengers? Because that guy's pretty cool.
Well, you know, she picked Thor just because it's easier to say than flying spaghetti monster. She likes that.
Right.
Very easy. But anyway, guys,
thank
you very much for everything you do. I really appreciate it.
All right, Jeremy.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Bye.
What do we got left? 10 minutes, give or take.
It goes by so quick, doesn't it?
Yeah, I know. Isaac, California?
Whittier, California?
Yeah, hello?
Hey.
Hi.
Big fan of the show. I'm just a bit nervous talking to you guys.
Chill out. It's only
what you got?
Thousands of people.
We're just people.
It's a very small show.
You know, growing up here in Los Angeles all my life, you know, I grew up with Mexican immigrants, and usually, like, the Hispanic community is usually, like, socially conservative and really being more religious.
What are they, Catholic?
Yeah, there's probably a lot of Catholicism, I would guess.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part. I mean, my dad was a Catholic, but my mother was a Seventh-day Adventist.
Okay. Did they get along?
Yeah, I mean, my dad's been here since '79.
I mean, you know, war. There was like several decades of bloody violence in Ireland over that sort of thing. So.
Religiously get along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not asking about marital bliss. Or
right.
anything,
No.
Right? I was confused.
I wasn't trying to pry into their personal life.
I'm teasing.
No, it's okay.
So what you got?
Well, I've you know, ever since I became an atheist, last year, you know, I went through certain phases, you know, but basically, I always thought, you know, why is it that minorities are usually more religious? You know, since, you know, especially in Western nations, they usually turn out
Are
to
you
be
asking
Christian.
us, or do you have a theory?
Well, I mean, I kind of do have a theory on that because.
Okay, let's hear it. I mean, we're a couple of middle-aged white men, so like when we talk about what motivates minorities, we're bound to step in something that'll get us angry mail.
I can throw
Yeah.
something out if you want.
I mean, yeah, I have speculation, but I'd rather hear yours, Isaac.
Sure.
Well, I mean, for black people, one of the things is that slavery, since they were subjugated and usually they were taught the Bible and everything, and I think one of the main reasons many of them converted was not really the whole, fear of punishment, but more of the wanting the whole reward that their life sucked now, but, when they die, they might get rewarded for it.
Okay,
Sure.
yeah, well, but what about Hispanics specifically?
Well, I mean, from experience, usually one of the things was that, a little bit of that, the whole reward thing, since, when the Europeans came here to the Americas, they usually, rape and pillage all in the name of Jesus.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's cultural, right? Because you tend to adopt the religion of your parents, right?
Yeah, and usually they did do it out of fear. I mean, they did it out of fear as well. I mean, they, killing most of the population and having to convert. I mean, people, we used to worship Quetzalcoatl. Well, I mean, I'm just speaking for my lineage, but
Right.
but we don't do that anymore. And I seem to wonder that why is it that we accept it now, knowing what happened in the past?
Well, having already given the disclaimer, Don, do you want to say what you think?
Well, I was going to dovetail with something that you said, and that is, if you are an oppressed person, you may not feel much of a sense of control, and having a religion that allies you with a powerful God might be very appealing, and it also dovetails with this reward idea of, yes, I'm suffering now, but eventually things will get better, and it's a way of maybe getting through a tough time or dealing with oppression. So I think that's partly why religions are appealing to minorities.
I also say, and I feel like I'm drawing on the experience of minorities that I've talked to, so I'm sure they'll write to me and tell me if I'm wrong. But it seems like being a minority, I mean, racism is a thing, sexism is a thing. When you're a member of a less privileged group, you kind of have a hard time getting allies because just being in that group makes you a target of suspicion. So religion can be a form of having a support network, and it's not that there aren't any prominent black atheists, and there are a lot of women atheists, but at the same time, it's a much bigger risk for somebody to come out voluntarily as a member of another oppressed group, which is atheists, because we're looked at with suspicion. And so if you come out with atheists as an atheist to your predominantly Catholic family, let's say, you dump your support network too, and it's way harder to do that than when you're a middle-aged white guy. Does that sound reasonable?
No, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
And, it was kind of tough to come out, especially to my mom, because, they genuinely believe it. And...
well, your story is very common. I hear it several times every time I come to an atheist meeting or group of some sort. So, and it's tough, right? Because you're a bit of an outsider now, right?
Yeah, I'm actually like the only non-Christian in my immediate and extended family, actually.
Right, and if you're recently out, you have to kind of adjust, right? Because the relationships are changing a little bit because you've changed, and there has to be a new normal. I think a mistake that atheists sometimes make is when something's new, it's kind of overly important because it's your new toy, your new identity, and you tend to kind of be a little bit of a crusader and maybe you forget all the things that you have in common with your family. I'm not accusing you of doing this, but I'm saying it's a common thing that when someone comes out as an atheist, they tend to kind of go a little overboard for a bit and then settle down.
Yeah, there are a couple of people who have been on the line since the show started, so I'm going to try to cruise through them in the last few minutes. But thanks for your call, and feel free to call back.
Thanks, Isaac.
Thanks for the time.
All right, bye. Oop, that's the one I just hung up. Michael in New York.
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry to keep you waiting for so long. You're going to have to make it quick, though.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. I don't find you guys covered everything I was going to talk about.
Oh, good.
I guess
that helps.
Let me just start off with a compliment then, or end with a compliment.
Uh-huh.
I just wanted to let you guys know I've been watching the religious debates, Hitchens, Harris, all those guys for about a year now, and I thought I'd heard all the arguments you could hear. But you guys as well, brought up a lot of points, and just the way you guys think, it was refreshing. There was more to learn.
Good. Well, that's great.
Yeah, religion's
a big topic. It's huge.
Yeah.
There's a lot of aspects to it. So.
Okay, one quick comment then. Kind of what you guys were talking about. I am amazed how Christians don't seem to be bothered by the fact that Jesus apparently was a failed apocalyptic prophet.
I think a lot of folks don't even know that.
Yeah, didn't he tell his disciples, you will all be alive for my second coming, whatever he called it, for my return.
Well, that's one of the parts they just kind of conveniently ignore.
if they know about it at all, which is,
Right, because a lot of Christians don't really read the Bible.
Yeah, so I just can't believe how this stuff just gets ignored or glossed over. It's incredible.
Well, for a lot of folks, the social support and the bonding and the folks they know there may be more important than the truth, right? The truth of the claims, and I think you can have both, but I don't think you have to skimp on truth to get social support. But maybe folks don't realize that.
No. Anyway, I'll go because not enough time. But
thanks for your call then.
I'll call back next week. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
We have 1 minute for Mike in Kentucky. Sorry, Mike, you want to hang on after the show and talk to us then? Or you want to pop out a question real quick?
It makes no difference to me.
All right, what's up? You got 1 minute, though, so make it quick.
How much I appreciate what you guys are doing for the atheist community because of how frowned upon we are just due to a lack of understanding.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're trying to rehabilitate the word.
I've been born atheist. I've never.
We all are.
Believed in irrationality.
So I hear.
I was born in a devout Catholic household, but it was never forced down my throat, and I think that's the problem.
Well, we are out of time, but I'm going to put you on hold and pick you up again afterwards, and that's our show. We'll see you at Threadgills. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and see you next week. Bye.